Yeah, can't be too much. Come with me. Tuesday. Do a business. So I'm sure you'll.
Now let me just see because I absolutely hate it. So show me which button I press. Yeah, I'm only going. Is it just that? Yeah, I could do that. Yeah. Yes, all right. Yeah, I'll go back. Yeah. Okay. That wasn't too bad. Okay. It's time to start. Hillary. Okay, we're going to start bang on time and we're going to keep to time throughout the session. My name is Nicola Martin and I work here at London South Bank University. I'm Professor of Social Justice and Inclusive Education, and within our our School of Law and Social Sciences, we have a research group called Critical Autism and Disability Studies. We work really closely with employment, autism and care trade. So welcome to this collaborative conference between all of us, really. I'm just doing the housekeeping for now. I appreciate it's a little bit warm. We have got the engineers looking at the air conditioning. It should be better than this. I apologise that we're getting warm already. We have a quiet room next door, which is signposted. And we've got water at the back, as well as coffee and biscuits. So if you just need to just take a break and get out of this room, absolutely fine. You don't have to ask permission or anything else. We just want you to be comfortable and, you know, walk backwards and forwards and help yourself to drinks or get people to pass you drinks. All that is completely fine. So I've got a list of housekeeping things I've got to go through. I've actually got 15 minutes to do this. It'll take me about 3, so that's fine. Right, fire escapes are clearly marked at the back. So you go out through the green fire escape door. We're not planning a fire and we're not planning a fire practice, but in the event, we're very, very near the exits. It's all fine. It's all accessible. So there's nothing to worry about in relation to fire escapes and so on. Toilets, male, female and gender neutral toilets are also on this floor. To the left, the female toilet, and the other toilets are to the right. I think I'm really terrible at left and right, but I think that's it. I know the gender neutral toilet is VG094, though you don't need to know that door, it's got a symbol on the door. Because there are many autistic people here who we absolutely welcome, it's absolutely brilliant. All our organisations are completely in tune with the nothing about us without us ethos in terms of research and practice, but we want to make the events obviously as autism friendly as possible. And one of the things we do is this: instead of clapping that makes a huge amount of noise, just to keep the noise down, because it can be a bit of a sensory nightmare, can't it? Everybody starts making the noise because the speakers are so fantastic, which inevitably, of course, they will. Lunch is at 1 o'clock. There's a mezzanine 1 floor up where the sandwiches will be served, because that's quite an open space, and then the whole place won't smell of whatever is in the sandwiches. There's a lift to the mezzanine as well, which is signposted outside. So you won't get lost. We'll make sure we guide you all up there at 1 o'clock. But take a break yourself anytime you like. That's absolutely no problem. I'm just looking for breaks between sessions. It's just whenever you like. All the speakers are going to stick to time, and we would really prefer it if you saved up any questions you have for the question sessions at the end of. We'll have two speakers, then a question session, because the time goes all over the place if speakers try and take questions as they go along. So scribble down any questions you've got, and you can ask us. There's multiple opportunities, A, to ask questions, and B, if you've got comments, suggestions or anything, but you don't feel comfortable asking questions, there's a flip chart at the back. Just scribble anything you like on the flip chart other than naughty words. That's absolutely fine. We have got a Twitter handle. There are various Twitter handles, but the one for the Critical Autism and Disability Studies Research Group is all uppercase at CADS _LSS. If you tweet, don't get anybody's face in the picture, because they might not want their face in the picture going around the Twitterati. You know, photograph the slides, that's absolutely fine. So tweeting is okay. But in terms of pictures, we're going to restrict that to the speakers unless anybody doesn't want their picture at all, and the slides. So people in the audience who are not comfortable with the pictures being all over the internet, that's not a thing that you have to worry about. Let me just go through my list. Fire escapes, housekeeping, toilets, bathroom, quiet rooms, rates. Oh yeah, big important thing. And then Hilary, I'm going to come to Hilary and say, what have I forgotten, Hilary? We have got evaluation forms, and we hugely value your contribution, because we want to hold events like this again, but we want them to get better and better. This is the first collaborative event that our 3 groups have put together. So please fill in the evaluation forms before you leave. And if you have to leave early, just grab one and fill it in for the part of the day that you've attended. And there's a green trolley on wheels at the back for the evaluation forms, I think. Now, I think I've been through the whole list of housekeeping. You may have noticed as you came in on your visitor badge, you had the option of putting the traffic lights on your visitor badge if you want to. Red being, I'm not comfortable with social contact, which hasn't, you know, that I don't feel ready for people just to come up and talk to me. Amber, a little bit more ambivalent, and green, chat to me as much as you like. If you want traffic lights on your badge and you didn't pick them up, we can get them for you, it's no problem. But we're all very respectful of each other in this sort of space. So anything you need, just ask. We've got volunteers around the room. I think perhaps if people from our groups just show themselves so you can see the people who might be able to help you with any questions. We're your helpers for the day as well. Okay. So Hilary, did I miss anything?
I don't think so, but the evaluation forms are on the table here, and the box to drop them afterwards is right next door in the basket on the floor. Did you mention the employment for the Autism Employment Conference 22 hashtag?
No, because I haven't got it inside my head. I've told you one Twitter hashtag, which is @CADS_LSS, which is Critical Autism and Disability Studies. But we have more than one hashtag, so 3 groups. So Hilary, if you want to say what that is, that'd be great.
It's hashtag Autism Employment 22.
Oh.
Autism Employment Conference 22. It's also environments as well as some social areas. Hashtag.
Fantastic, thank you. And what about Pedro? Have you got a hashtag that you want people to be thinking about?
So we're going to use the conference one today.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. And please retweet, etc., if that's your thing. But don't feel any pressure to do it. I personally hate tweeting. I just feel I have to do it because people keep telling me I need to do it. But you know, it would be really good to get this information out of having this sort of conference. I think it's very important. So I think we're done with housekeeping. So probably I can get onto my slides a little bit early. Is everybody happy with that? Okay, unless any of my colleagues want to say anything before I start. Yeah, Phil, you can introduce the session and then I'll get back on it.
Indeed. How do we show appreciation? Fantastic. Should we do that? Okay, excellent. Excellent stuff. I'm Phil Wilson. I work, day job is in civil service, cabinet office. It's a busy time at the moment, you may have noticed. And we are doing lots of different things, but it's a real pleasure to be here. I'm one of the members of the steering group for employment autism, and that's a great privilege to be so, and a real pleasure to see you all this morning. Very nice way to start the week, and I hope everybody is very well and had a lovely weekend. The weather wasn't too bad, was it? Do it cooler as well, which was nice. Anyway, we're going to press on, and we've got some wonderful sessions. We've actually got 4 sessions across the day, and each of those sessions has 2 speakers. And that's one of the research we've got. Yeah, so we've got 8 speakers effectively, and then we've also got a panel at the end, which will allow you to ask questions and interact and so on. And also, if there's anything during the day that you want to pick up, please just come to us. And of course, there'll be lots of opportunities to ask questions of our wonderful speakers, which will happen as we go through the day. Okay, so let's press on here. So session 1 is all about the employability journey, and we have none other than Nicola, who we just heard from, and also Judith Kerem is going to be speaking as well, one after the other. And then after those 2 inputs, there'll be an opportunity for questions, and we'll have a discussion, and then we'll move on to the next session. So lots happening. So let's start then with Nicola. And as we heard, Nikki is Professor of Social Justice and Inclusive Education here at London South Bank. So very, very gratified that Nicola can allow us to be at this venue, and she's also visiting professor at Cambridge University, no less. How often do you do that?
Quite a lot, really.
Excellent. And also Sheffield Hallam University. And is a National Teaching Fellow of the RSA. So wonderful credentials. So Nikki will be talking about a research-informed exploration of barriers and enablers in relation to autism. So a very big topic and fascinating topic. And then after Nikki, we will hand over to Judith. But Nikki, it's a pleasure to hand over. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks. You think as I'm a professor, I should be able to tell left from right. I'm really terrible with the clicker, so if it all goes in the wrong direction, just tell me, because I think I'm clicker phobic actually, because I don't like it. Anyway, give it a go. So, our research group is located within the Centre for Social Justice and Global Responsibility, and everything we do has a social justice theme in terms of the Critical Autism and Disability Studies research group. It's all about research which actually makes a proper difference to actual people's actual lives, rather than some kind of big fat dusty PhD that sits on some shelf somewhere and nobody looks at it ever again. So I'm going to look at some of the research that we've undertaken within our research centre, which is relevant to this agenda. And I'll just pick on one of our projects, which is most relevant, which is about mentoring. So it's a research-informed exploration of barriers and enablers to employment in relation to autism. Okay. Some context for you, where we are now in terms of the possibility for research funding and the possibility for change for autistic people by a sort of government-led high-level initiative. The National Strategy for Autistic People, Children and Young People, was launched 2 or 3 months ago. I can't remember the date exactly now, but within the last 10, 12 weeks. And this is a strategy which goes from 21 to 26. And obviously, as Phil said, the parliamentary colleagues are in a state of disarray at the moment. So this is a little bit aspirational, but this is the sort of thing, the sort of focus for development around autism legislation, policy and practice. And it builds effectively on what was the start of it, which was the Autism Act in 2009 and subsequent iterations of that we've had as it's morphed its way through. I'd say the Autism Act hasn't done everything it promised yet by any means. And as researchers, we need to jump on the autism strategy, A, to find our research funding, and B, to make a difference. And this is the same for employment, autism and care trade as well. So I'm just going to take you briefly through the priorities of the strategy. These are the priorities, okay? Improving understanding and acceptance of autism within society, improving autistic children and young people's access to education, supporting positive transitions into adulthood. This is where it butts up against the Children and Families Act, because the Children and Families Act is all about helping young people right up to the age of 25 to make transitions into further education, employment, training. Children and Families Act shot itself massively in the foot by not even mentioning higher education. But obviously, the university sector is a really important part of that as well. There it is, supporting more autistic people into employment. That's what we're nailing our flag to. Tackling health and care inequalities for autistic people. We have research in that area as well, which I won't focus on today. Building the right support in the community and improving support within the criminal and youth justice system. So our focus is employment here, but overarching all this is that these initiatives need to be informed by autistic people. And this is our approach within our research centre. Our researchers are autistic people, properly paid and properly supported to carry out autism research. So there's all this money. It's a lot of work. I don't know, Phil knows more about money than me. It looks like a lot of money and we want to get our hands on it. And I've highlighted in that sort of turquoise colour the bits which I think might be relevant to employment. Tackle inequalities, build support in the community. Stuff about schools and colleges, preparing for adulthood. And this Understanding Autism campaign obviously needs to extend to employers, because there's this whole thing about up to the front door. But if you find yourself in employment and it's not working for you, that's probably because the employers need a little bit more understanding of how to help you to get the best out of your job and help them to get the best out of you. So there's all that money there, and you've got access to these slides. It's no point reading that out. That's where I got that information from. I always advise people to go straight to the easy read version where it is summarized. So there's a link for you. And obviously research always requires funding, and getting research funding is always challenging. And one of the issues, particularly for our autistic researchers, is that job security around being a researcher in academia is terrible, because we've just, for example, I've got an excellent researcher, Dr. Nick Chown. Last payday was last week because our funding has stopped and we're seeking other funding. We had 4 pots of 3 months worth of funding. So in terms of job security, research jobs are insecure, but nevertheless, one of our aspirations is autistic researchers doing autism. Okay, and some of our stuff that we've done has been completely unfunded actually, but you know, we can't keep doing that. So our principles: fair pay for autistic expertise, supportive working environment, prominence of autistic voices, and social model thinking. And this is what Care, Trade and Employment Autism are about as well. It's this thing about what are the barriers which autistic people experience in terms of accessing work, and it's the environment which needs to change. It's not the autistic person that needs to change. And social model thinking is all about eradicating barriers. And our big principle as well is usefulness. You know, we don't do silly nonsense research which is not going to benefit anybody, because we basically don't see the point. And one of my colleagues, Liz Pellicano, she did an excellent study about what sort of research do autistic people want to be done around research. Mostly it's nothing to do with genetics, it's mostly to do with eradicating barriers. So this is where we're coming from within our research group. We set up something which you are all welcome to be part of. You're all welcome to be part of this research group as well, and many of you are, called the Participatory Autism Research Collective, PARC. And this was when I worked with Damien Milton, who was a researcher here. And Dr. Milton is, although PARC is a collective, so we don't really talk about leaders, but he is sort of Mr. PARC, if you like. And that's international now. There are PARC meetings which take place all over the place. One of our colleagues here, Leo, he's spoken at a PARC meeting, Leo, who works for the National Autistic Society. And it's about helping autistic people get proper paid employment as researchers. So, you know, just look at these links and join in. So, lots of different research projects, and trying to boil them down into the overarching findings. It's actually quite easy to do this because the same stuff comes up again and again and again. And at the end, I've got a series of slides which give you the references for all the research projects I'm talking about, so I won't go into any in particular detail. They're all open access, meaning you don't have to belong to a university to read any of those papers. You just Google the author at the university and you can have access to all the papers. So, overarching findings: autistic people, as you will know in this room, have many of the strengths which make them brilliant employees. These strengths include application, dedication, reliability, having an in-depth interest, which if the in-depth interest actually matches what you've got to do for your job, that's a win-win-win situation for everybody. Integrity, honesty, loyalty, focus, an incredible work ethic, and absolute straightforwardness. Some of the best people I know are autistic. This is what autistic people are like, and this is what all my colleagues are like that I work with. To the extent I can't keep up with them, So, for example, we just had this 3-month project. Autistic Doctors International formed the steering group project, and Dr. Nick Chan was the researcher. And we did far more than any university would think we could ever do with £10,000 and 3 months. And that's because of the work ethic of the autistic people involved in that project. And my role is to say, what am I supposed to be doing now? What am I supposed to be doing now? Because they're really on it. But they're well supported in the workplace, which enables them to do the job really. Because these barriers are awful and these barriers are ubiquitous. Yeah. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. So all right, Mariam, so I'm supposed to be on that screen then there, yeah. No, it's okay, it's fine. So these are barriers, and I'm sure you will all be sighing when I say this, and yeah, this is my experience. We can discuss it in questions, of course. Chaotic working environments. i.e. not knowing where you're supposed to go for what, you know, how you get some staples to put in the stapler, right through to how you're actually supposed to get paid. Disadvantages in education. Many jobs require a degree. Many people have had so much disadvantage in education, despite their capability, they haven't graduated. Interviews. All the unconscious bias that comes to bear in an interview situation around things like the way the person is expected to communicate, the sort of eye contact they might be supposed to be making, and all that sort of thing. All these socially constructed barriers, basically nonsense, aren't they? But clearly a barrier. Inadequate support actually in the workplace. And what happens is sometimes somebody will make a decision to say that they're autistic before they have an interview, which is very positive, then have an interview which is very autism friendly, unusually, but it could happen. But then the information doesn't translate to the actual employment. So you may have the expectation you're going to be supported in the employment context, but it's all collapsed because there's disconnects in the system. Like a joined up picture available of the support that is available, including things like access to work. The sensory environment can be a complete nightmare. I feel a bit embarrassed saying that in this hot room, but open plan offices, etc. Ambiguity, not unclear expectations, all those sort of things can create barriers. Unconscious bias I've mentioned, but it all adds up to ableism. And ableism is about assuming that somebody exists who's called mythical norm, and that all workers are exactly the same, and that that's the way we do things around here. You have to actually accommodate and celebrate difference, including neurodiversity, including autism. And ableism is the opposite of that. So the workplace needs quite a lot of education. So the work-based culture could be an enabler. The Equality Act, translated into practices of universal design within a culture of valuing diversity at every stage in the employment journey, matched up with clear, effective systems and clear guidance about where to turn to for help, is enabling and the opposite of ableism. Mentoring can be enabling. So we did this project, which I'll talk about in a few minutes now. I'm completely lost track of time.
10 minutes.
Oh, perfect. So this project, I'll tell you a little bit about. The Signet Mentoring Project, which I did with Dr. Damien Milton, indicated that goal-orientated, time-limited mentoring, which helps autistic adults to identify and work towards their own specific self-identified goals, that works well. Mentors require training by autistic adults to understand autism, because training undertaken by non-autistic people can very often fall into the stereotype trap. And mentor schemes need to be supervised effectively. What's quite alarming is the number of people who can actually set themselves up as mentors without necessarily having undertaken these things, and how many schemes can be set up which don't have checks and balances around them to make sure that they're doing no harm. So ethics is a huge part of that. Self-employment is a big thing. There are many self-employed autistic people. Things like buying and selling on eBay, things like that could play into autistic traits, but absolutely not necessarily. We're not all saying If you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. And that sort of thing can reduce some of the workplace barriers, but is very difficult to organise without help. More possible, of course, in the digital age, but things like invoicing and getting people to pay up, that can be an absolute nightmare. And mixing paid work with benefits, that's not easy. Things like access to work funding can support self-employed people. But you think about a navigator, a mentor could help a person navigate into self-employment, including managing their taxes and everything else. But you don't want a mentor who says, oh no, you don't want to do self-employment, that could be far too difficult for you. That's not going to help, because if that's your goal, that's what the mentor should help you to do. So effective support. Reliability is key. Just do what you said you were going to do. Ambiguity makes it difficult to plan and problem solve effectively. Mentors need to find out what the autistic person wants to do rather than impose their own ideas. And you need to anticipate as a mentor probable experience of exploitation, social exclusion and bullying has been part of that person's journey, particularly in school. Challenges around thinking in abstract terms about possible work and often limited work experience, because that happens, the tyranny of low expectations. We find autistic people who didn't go on work experience when they were in school will have gaps in their CVs. And you know, the autism strategy could do much around that. And navigating support systems such as access to work is not straightforward, and that's where mentoring can help. I've got a few examples here. I'm not going to go through them in detail because of time, but these are made up people. They don't exist. I'm not compromising anybody's confidentiality. But for example, Jean, Oxbridge degree and pure maths, so obviously brilliant. Reliable, serious, hardworking, productive. She's recently started a clerical job because underemployment is a big thing in an open plan office, which is hideous for her. She arrived late because public transport was a hideous nightmare. And then her line manager said, what time do you call this? In a sort of aggressive way. And that put Jean in a very disadvantaged position in relation to that workplace. And none of that had to happen. So that's just an example of an unconducive workplace. Then we've got Ali. He's a really hard worker, loves everything to do with gardening, doesn't mind the weather, he's punctual, he's reliable, but he's got a peer who is actually really lazy, who is completely exploiting him and sitting in the shed while Ali does all the work. So something sensitive has to happen there so that Ali can carry on in that role. So just some examples from experience. So this is what mentoring is: a time-limited, goal-orientated relationship supporting personal and vocational goals. It's not counselling, it's not buddying. Buddying can feel quite patronising. It's helping you to get to where you want to be. So mentoring can help with goal setting, action planning, prioritising, time management, change and transition, developing self-confidence, challenges in social and personal interactions, getting to know new environments or procedures, exploring options for the future, advice and guidance, giving and receiving constructive feedback, etc., etc., etc. But autistic people who have access to a mentor need help in working out what the boundaries of that role are and how they can make it work effectively for them. And that's a lot of our research focus. This is one of the things we did, the salmon line. The mentor identifies their goal and then they place themselves along this line. And then they work out what they could do to get further along the line so that they can revisit it in a very systematic way. We found that worked effectively. So mentee is encouraged by the mentor to describe what the bottom and the top of that line would look like and to mark where they are in it now. Like my goal is to get a job and I'm at point 2 because I'm nowhere near it. So there are tangible steps towards that goal. And it's just one of the tools we use. And we're always informed by something called personal construct theory, which means the worldview of the mentee is really important. And the mentor must not impose their worldview on the mentee. So if the mentee says, oh, I want to be a doctor, and the mentor thinks, well, you haven't even got GCSE biology. That's not a good starting point, is it? That's a mismatch. So it's about exploring, and I know lots of autistic doctors, but it may be there is something else in the healthcare field, for example, or it may be they're exploring what you actually need to do in terms of university, etc. But saying, oh no, you're not going to be able to do that. No help at all. So it's a little bit of a summary there, which I'm not going to go through now because I'm sort of running out of time. Just to say there's some flyers at the back, because it's CPD Standard Office accredited, our mentor training course, and it's approved by the DFE, so that anybody working with an autistic student as a mentor, that's one of the approved routes. And we're really gratified that university mentors have to have some qualification now. And it's online, and it's face-to-face, and it's bespoke. We're working with employment autism to turn it a little bit away from higher education, more towards the broader employment landscape. So that's going to be one of our areas of development we're going to work on. So, initiatives underpinned by research informed by autistic expertise at credibility and value. Research funding is precarious, and therefore the working conditions of autistic researchers are fragile. Collaboration can maximise impact, but researchers often work in isolation around similar themes with small pots of disjointed funding. 10,000 here, 10,000 there. If you add it all up, collaborate and work together, can be far more effective. And this conference, my concluding thought, is an example of that collaboration. And then there's pages and pages of references which you can really find fascinating. You're very welcome to look at. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Judith now. Oh, Bill first. Sorry, I'm getting it wrong all the time.
Okay, let's show our appreciation, Nikki. Thank you so much. And there will be a chance for questions.
Hi, can I just ask, if people are using acronyms, could you just tell us what they mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm still sitting here going, oh, what's
Oh, absolutely. Okay.
that?
Shall I tell you now?
Do.
CPD Standards Office, Continuous Professional Development, DFE, Department for Education, NADP, National Association of Disability Practitioners, which is people that work with autistic people in universities and colleges, actually. That was it, I think. Sorry, good point. Stand corrected.
Excellent. Excellent. Good point. Very good point. And thank you so much, Nicola, for a wonderful overview on a number of issues, which will really help. Okay, so we're going to move on, and then after our next speaker, there will be a chance for questions, discussion, and so forth. And it's Judith. Oh, we managed to. There we go.
Start at the beginning.
That's what we need. Judith Kerem is Development Director at Care Trade charity that provides training for young people with autism to move them into employment. So Judith's talk is on the workplace in practice and real life experience. Okay, thanks Judith. Looking forward to this.
Thank you, everyone. It's really great to see something. It's very exciting. I'm going to go through and talk a little bit about care trade, talk a little bit about employment in practice. So Nikki's set the story really well. She talked about things like the Equality Act and all the other acts and all the other things that are barriers to employment. But I want to talk about what we do to break down those barriers. And there are 3 examples of 3 amazing people we work with who have broken down those barriers with support and are now in employment or working towards going to employment. And I think it's really important to make sure that we are positive and we have positive role models and that people see that there is a way into employment. And that's any type of employment. So at Care Trade, we are very focused on the individual. As far as we're concerned, we are there to facilitate, to support. We are not there, as Nikki said, to make decisions for people. We are there to support them to make their own decisions, to support them to upskill, and to look at what options they have when they're moving into employment or moving into their future goals. So for us, it isn't just about employment. It could be that they want to go to university or college to gain more experience before they then look at employment. And also for us, and for the young people we work with, it isn't just about going into paid employment. A lot of people we work with, for various reasons, will want to work, do work experience or long-term voluntary work. And that is just as meaningful for that individual as going into paid work. And it can lead into paid work later on. So, Care Trade has been running since 2010. We started off very small. We're still relatively small, but what we do has a huge impact. And actually moving into the workplace is one of the single most positive effects on someone's life. There are so many positives that come with employment, and it's not just for the individual, it's for their families, their carers, their friends, all around them. And I have to say, I've been doing this for quite a few years, too many to mention, and I am constantly learning. I'm constantly learning from the people that I work with, I support, because that's the way it should be. It should be a collaboration. I'm learning, they're learning, and it works out really well. So we have the Autism Project, which is our employability program for 18 to 25-year-olds with an education, health and care plan, EHCPs. And we run it in partnership with two amazing hospitals in London. We've got Guy's and St Thomas's and the Whittington Hospital. And what they enable us to do is give our young people real working experience. So they are able to go into the workplace, practice their skills, figure out if they like a job, figure out if it's not a job that they want, and be able to move through into other experiences to actually come out with qualifications as well. So we support them to get maths and English as well. But what they do is they are practicing what they're going to do in the workplace. And actually it's very, very close to what they will be doing. And what that does, it has a really positive effect both ways. So the young person is able to go into the workplace with support. So we have job coaches that support our young people. They get to know that individual. They work with them all the way through the program. But it also enables us to work with the employer, or the department that we're working with. They get to see autism in real life. They get to see what adjustments they need to make. They get to see how it works. They get to see the amazing value that an autistic member of staff brings to a team. And hopefully into employment. And we were talking about recruitment before. And sometimes, you know, the barriers to recruitment are huge. Recruitment, it really is about you selling yourself. And if you struggle to do that, you are never going to show an employer how brilliant you are. And one of the really great things about the Autism Project is that employers get to see how brilliant our young people are. And when a job does come up, they're already in the system and they have to go through the recruitment process in the same way as everybody else, but they've almost done their work trial so that when they go to interview, the people interviewing them know them already and understand the adjustments needed and really can support them to go through the process properly. So we're talking about universal design. It's really important that we're breaking down those barriers and making sure they're not even there in the first place. So it's really, really, really important that we take down those barriers, that we have equity in the workplace, not just equality, we have equity. So that things that are there that will affect somebody are taken away. And that happens through experience, through practice, through sometimes it is trial and error. And it is one person per person. You can't make an adjustment for one person and expect it to work for somebody else. You've got to be able to know the individual, know what adjustments they need. Always ask the person. There's no point asking me. Okay, we're asking the individual. I can support that individual, but I literally am supporting. Ask the individual. It's the autism voice. Last year, 71% of our TAP graduates were offered jobs. And that is a real testament to their resilience and the amazing work that our staff do, because they went through COVID. So we went online, work experiences stopped. We still managed to support people to go into work. They managed, through their own resilience, to go and get jobs with our support. We do a lot of consultancy, advice and training to employers. We really feel that you've got to meet in the middle. Giving someone the skills and the ability to go into the workplace is one thing, but you've then got to support them and their employer when they're in the workplace. It's not just stopping at the front door, as Nikki said. And we do that through various things. We do access to work support. So we're really lucky in the fact that we have a very holistic approach to how we support care trade. So we may start with somebody at 18 who has never worked, never had any work experience, was excluded at school from the week of work experience because it was too difficult to sort one out. We hear that a lot. But what we're able to do is support them all the way through the Autism project, all the way through into job finding. We have a project that runs for over 25s, and we have an alumni job fund. We also have an access to work program so that we could literally follow someone all the way through their journey with the right support and get them into work and sustaining work, which is the real key. But we have to do that in working with employers. It's really important that it's a collaborative approach. So we do a lot of training with employers. And I have to say, in the last, well, since September, I worked it out the other day, we have trained over 1,000 people through online and face-to-face around how to support people within the workplace. We have done that around inclusive work practices. We've done that about autism awareness. We make it quite bespoke. We support people, employers who are thinking of employing people. We also support employers who have people already on their staff. And we can then support and make adjustments and recommendations. It's always with that individual as well. In work support and access to work are brilliant. So it enables somebody to be successful within the workplace. It's funded through the Department of Work and Pensions. As Nikki said, it is really difficult at the moment to apply. There is a huge backlog, but it is possible to do. And organisations like ours, like Employment Autism, we can support people to do that. We can help and advise, and we can kind of push it along if necessary. So don't be scared by access to work. There are lots of ways that you can get support to provide that for an individual or for yourselves. Our Think Talent internship, which actually starting today, is something that we run with Barclays Law Department, and it enables autistic and neurodiverse law graduates and final year students to have a week. At the moment it's a week because most of it's online. It used to be 2 weeks face to face, to do an internship that breaks down barriers. So internships, especially for law and especially for banking and other areas, are incredibly hard for an autistic candidate to get into. It is all about selling yourself. It's all about what experiences you've had. It's all about who you know sometimes. What Think Talent does is it basically makes it available and accessible for autistic candidates. And they are then able to see what it's like to work in a law firm and in-house in a law department, such as Barclays. And a lot of people who have done the programme have then gone on to work for those companies because the companies have been able to see them, see their value, and they would not have necessarily seen them in a mainstream recruitment process. So I have talked about our Over 25s programme. Over 25s funding is incredibly hard to get hold of. We're really lucky we got this funding. And it enables us to be able to support someone 25 to 35 back into work. There are lots of barriers that people have when they're slightly older in looking for work. Past history, experiences, maybe they want to change of career, maybe they've never had that educational support or advice that other people have had. They almost sometimes need to rethink what they want to do. And if they're long-term unemployed, they haven't been in the workplace for so long that they need that little bit of support to help them back in there. So last year when we ran 2 similar projects, and over 50% of our participants moved back into work, which is a huge achievement. And when you look at the 29% autistic adults who are in any form of employment, which is National Statistics 2022, we are bucking that trend. And a lot of that is down to giving the right support at the right time and making sure that people are aware of their vocational choices, that they're aware of what they are really good at, but at the same time, they're aware of where they're not so strong at. So, you know, I would never go into banking because I can't add up to save my life. I know that. That's an area of career that I have never gone down that route. But I can do this job. So that's the job I've gone down into. And it's exactly the same for an autistic person. We are finding the ways to support them. And if it is someone wants to be a doctor, they haven't got the GCSEs or the A-levels, there are so many other jobs that will reach their kind of their goals and their skills, especially within the NHS, especially within hospitals. There are so many jobs and there are so many options as well. So once you're within the NHS, there are lots of amazing apprenticeships and opportunities and traineeships where you can kind of go from one job to another and train up and get those skills. So it's not necessarily where you start. If you've got the goal of where you finish, you can do other things along the way, but only with the right support.
Oh, what's going on? No, the conference is next door.
So the next piece
This is just a quiet room if you just wanted some space.
about what our young people have done. They have gone from not having work, possibly not feeling very confident about their abilities, not maybe even knowing what they want to do, to being in work and being successful. That is only natural.
See, yeah.
And we're incredibly, I have to say, it really is an honour that I work with, and I learn from them every single day. So we have Harry, who is a porter at Guy's and St Thomas's. Now, a portering job is probably one of the most important jobs within the hospital. There are so many jobs within the hospital that people don't know about, don't see, don't value even. And actually, COVID took a lot of the jobs, flipped them around, and people realised how important those jobs are. And I've got a quote later on from the portering manager, but the role is vital. Harry's role is incredibly vital. His skills, his determination have led him to the job. He's really successful in the job. And you've got a quote from him, which, you know, he was hoping to get a job, and my dream job came true. And that shouldn't be the exception. That should be the norm. And then we've got Ashley. So Ashley at the moment is actually, she just did her internship at TK Maxx, who I have to give a big shout out to, have been absolutely fantastic in their adjustments that they made for Ashley and another team member. And she'll describe herself as a social butterfly. So, you know, it's also dispelling the myths and the stereotypes of what an autistic person is. So there are lots of jobs that people think, oh, autistic person wouldn't go into a job in retail, there's too much communication. That's complete rubbish, personally, because actually you can do whatever you want to do if that's a goal you want to aim for with the right support. So Ashley absolutely did brilliantly at her placement. She's actually had a job interview and we are waiting to hear the outcome. So we are hoping that it's very positive, but she really worked hard. She really kind of showed what she could do, and she had a really good manager to support her and look at the breakdown that she needed, support she needed, and respond to her own needs, her own individual needs. So she was given clear expectations. She had the opportunity to take breaks when she needed it, and Ashley found value in one of the busiest retail stores in London. And the quote again is, everyone should feel like they matter, says Ashley. And being confident in myself means I don't have to be ashamed to be autistic. It kind of says it all, really. No one should be ashamed about who they are, what their identity is, how they identify. So we need to make sure that that's happening. But we also do a lot of self-advocacy. So we are making people we work with aware of kind of their strengths and how they can sell themselves and how they can be positive about themselves and have that ability to be able to go out there and go, I'm autistic, but I can still do this. And we've got Dee's story. So Dee was at the Whittington. He was on our autism project. He was at, he did data entry, volunteering and e-learning projects when he was at the Whittington. And he then returned to work there in health records. Health records is an amazing department to work in. It's also one of those departments that have become some hero within hospitals. Without the health records department, doctors, nurses, anybody medical, anybody wouldn't know what's going on in clinics. And actually, the amount of work that goes on before you even sit down in a clinic when you have a hospital appointment is immense. It's also important actually to say at the moment that when someone comes to you for a job interview, it's amazing how much work has gone on beforehand to even get them to the interview stage. And I don't know if employers always fully appreciate how much work has gone in to supporting someone to even go to an interview, because they are quite stressful environments. So it's really important that we support someone and give them enough confidence to even go to an interview. So Dee made such a good impression on the team that he applied for NHS bank work. And he is now, we're supporting him through access to work. He's now working in another NHS trust in the breast screening department. And he's doing really, really well. You know, he's really settled in. We support him through access to work. The support we give him, because we knew him previously, is very centered on him. We know him well. He trusts us. He can come to us for advice. And actually, he needs less support because he's had so much support to begin with. And that's another thing to bear in mind. A lot of our young people who come through the Autism Project, when they actually go into the workplace, they need less support because a lot of things are put in place already. We support the employer, we support the young person. And from a cost perspective, that's great for the Department for Work and Pensions. They don't have to pay as much to access to work, but the money is there if they need it. So the Health Records Service Manager is, since DV joined the Health Records team, he has been polite, enthusiastic, and a good all-rounder. He's a self-starter who's very keen to learn new skills. We are really happy for him. So he's part of the team and we see him progressing within the NHS. That's music to my ears. You know, it's not just about, right, got a job, great, tick the box. It's where else can he go next? How can we support him to progress if he wants to? And I think that's really, really important because there isn't really a job for life anymore. And actually you can do a job for a few years and go, it's not quite right for me anymore, I want to move on. And this is exactly a really good example of people being able to move on, use their skills, build their skills, and move on. So that's basically all I have to say. I just want to say a couple more things, is that what's really important is that we are supporting the employer, we are supporting the employees. It's also important to support the job coaches. So the job we do is incredibly varied. I can be in a tech firm one day, I can be in medical records another day. And it's really important that we are supported as a job, as a role. So one of the other great collaborative things that we have done recently, since January, is with Employment Autism, is set up a Job Coach Cafe through LinkedIn. And it now has over 200 members. And it is an area in a safe space where job coaches ask questions, get advice. We can advertise on there. We do regular monthly webinars where we can focus on a different area. I have to say the most popular one is access to work, but it's giving job coaches the right support as well, and giving them a way in to kind of building their skills as well and being better job coaches. Job coaches do such a varied job, but it is really important that they're well trained and well supported. It can be incredibly stressful. So there's my favourite quote of all times from Alan, portrait manager. He has George. George has been working for him for 7 years. And he also has 2 other members of staff now through Hair Trade who he works with. And he's building his empire. And the value that our people add to his work makes his life so much easier, basically. If you go to our website, we've got a series of films on the front page. And one of those films is based at GSTT. So big shout out to GSTT. Guys and St Thomas's, sorry. And George is in that. His manager's in it. We've got other people in it. And it's just a really positive film. It shows, with the right support, how brilliant someone can be and go into their dream job. And then this is another quote from another member of staff. Having someone to feedback and have their perspective and decoding feedback given by my manager really helps. It's like having an interpreter. So that's what somebody wants out of support, and that's what we're able to give them. So thank you very much for listening. There is a QR code there, but all the slides will be sent out as well, and that's the love of George, who just blows my mind every time I talk to him. It's amazing. So thank you very much, and I think Nikki and I can now take questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Really, really interesting inputs. Okay. Any questions on this? Thank you.
Can I just ask Judith? Sure. Looking at your slide earlier and the role of the HCP, seeing that there's kind of a gap. If someone's under 25, had any HCP at school, doesn't have them now, where would he go to support within your structure?
So that program actually is for, I should be more clear, it's actually for 25 to 35-year-olds or those under 25 without education healthcare package. But we can support them. But there is a real gap in support available if you're under 25 without an education healthcare package. Because, you know, the funding should be there. And there's a real, I think EHCPs need to be improved. And there's, I think, a lot of work going on at the moment with kind of changes to the SEND Act. And I think they need to improve, but there is support available.
We need to improve, but if you had one at school,
Yeah.
left school with one, say, reapplied at 18 when you come to terms with diagnosis, when it's refused it, you're told that now you're coping. Nobody in your life thinks you're coping. Nobody. Where would that person then go within your structure?
So if they haven't got an EHCP, then they can come on our 25s program. If they have one or they need help applying for one because they're going back into education. So the Autism Project is a Ofsted registered program. So we are funded through the education, So if somebody comes to us and needs to reapply for an EHCP, we can signpost and we can support that as well. So it's really important that we actually match someone to the right program. So it could be that the Autism Project is still the right program for them, but we need to kind of look at how we get the EHCP back in.
You have to have one to be on the project.
Yes.
Even if it had been turned down.
Yes. But we can kind of look at how we can support to appeal. So I can talk to you afterwards about it because we've got other charities that support that.
Just remind us what EHCP is.
Education, health and care plan.
And there's a question here.
So I've got a few questions. I hope you don't mind. One of my questions is actually where can you find a mentor for somebody who's come out of university? And I also like to speak about PSAs, which are atrocious. They do not help autistic people whatsoever. But that's another thing.
Well, I can talk about the DSAs, that's fine.
Okay. So that's sorry.
Disabled students
allowed.
allowance.
Get a mentor, go into a job where somebody perhaps I've got a I'm talking about myself. Is currently in employment fantastic, but they're only doing 2 months. And trying to leap from that onto a permanent job with a mentor. Where can you find a mentor? So that was one of my questions. The other question is if anybody's doing it at PSA and the support they feel to autism, undergraduate, because the support they give for autism is inadequate, even though they've been trained in all these qualifications through the NAS, National Autistic Society, because I found with my son, he did a and you've got this lecture theatre of 30 popular Italian people, and such a big change from going to school where he was able to have one-to-one with his whatever tutor, to then having this people milling around, God knows what they're doing, couldn't make it one-to-one. And when I actually asked somebody in the DSA, I said, I can't find the DSA can pay for that. They're paying 60 quid an hour for somebody who doesn't understand physics at all, couldn't organise it, or anything like that. And they said, oh no, that was putting them at an advantage alone. And I'm like, so I just thought that's 60 quid that they were paying, and he was getting 4 hours of that every week. So imagine the money for the 3 years. It's ridiculous money paying somebody to do heaven knows what. So I think the whole DSA program is wrong. It doesn't, we didn't have one.
I'll do the DSA first. DSA is the disabled student account. No, it's okay. I'm behind the pillar. I'll just move up. So, the first hurdle of DSA is requiring a diagnosis. Adult diagnosis is problematic because there are waiting lists, etc., etc. So we first of all have to hurdle medical evidence. So as your son obviously had the medical evidence, was eligible for DSA. The bureaucracy around the DSA is massive. There's about an 8-stage process to get to a point where you have a DSA assessment in an assessment centre, and the DSA assessor is supposed to be somebody who is qualified to understand autism. Some DSA assessors are brilliant, some maybe are not, don't have the understanding of autism that they should have. I used to run an assessment centre and I've been a DSA assessor, and we have a group within the National Association of Disability Practitioners, autism practitioners. Our view is very strongly specialist DSA assessors who understand autism are the people that we do in those jobs, which should translate into an individual learning plan which includes a mentor who understands autism. The practice across the sector is certainly variable. In some universities it's excellent, and I'll take Cambridge as an example actually, because we did a lot of work within Cambridge, working with Cambridge students, autistic Cambridge students accessing DSA, and there's a specialist autism practitioner who's part of our research there called Joanne Haswell. Cambridge is good. Sheffield Hallam is good. Some universities, well, yeah, it is. Some universities are less good. Somebody's saying anyway, if the mentor is not, if it's not working, the person to go back to is the head of the disability service. But as a parent, the relationship between the university to the student, not with the parent, therefore there's some negotiation that has to happen there. And the one thing that I used to head up the assessment centre at Sheffield Hallam and disability service and the autism centre. And what we negotiated there was that an autistic student could give us permission to have a conversation with their parent, with them present, to solve a particular issue and concern. So if your son was at Hallam and he was really concerned about his mentor, he might give you permission to talk to him about it, but involve him in the conversation. And we would change that mentor actually, change and train that mentor. But it's really, the DSA systemically needs to be fixed in terms of bureaucracy. But individual universities, if they have properly trained mentors, who they properly supervise, that's the point as well. Because sometimes mentors come from agencies beyond the institution. The institution needs to know what those mentors are doing. Those mentors need to know who to turn to for help in the institution if they have concerns about it. So the DSA isn't a complete in the state of collapse. The DSA is patchy. I've gone on a bit now. I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, my question was more different.
Yeah.
When I tried to dig into it further, I think university, as far as the university, go to the DSA, the assessors were like, well, this is what's laid down by law. You go into the law, and it goes, oh, the assessor should have this qualification, that qualification.
So, but there should be a named person at the university. Should be.
DSA, the assessment, they don't actually, because they have support from the parents, like, well, not
Yeah.
right.
And they are right, the DSA has to modify, change the support.
Right,
It's
so
true.
my question was actually, if there was something very work
Yes, there is.
to modify the requirement for help, that
Yeah.
£60.
Yeah, there's a specialist group convened by the Department for Education working on exactly that, which is part of the big review. The other part of the question related to leaving university. So a disabled student is eligible for every aspect of the university provision alongside every other student, and reasonable adjustments according to the Equality Act includes careers and alumni services. So, for example, Oxford and Cambridge, the career service support you progressive life notionally. I'm sure they don't do that really, but they say they do. Other universities will give you 2 years support with career service, the alumni services, etc. And if a disabled student is not getting that, then the university is not taking that aspect of the Equality Act on board adequately because they're disadvantaging somebody in the grounds of disability. So it's worth looking at what the alumni and career service is supposed to do. This is supposed to do it for everybody. I don't know if that's helpful or not. And then obviously access to work is not just about, it's also about job search, as Judith knows, practical experience at the moment, backlogs, etc.
Access to work is incredibly hard. And we can, so we're always happy for people to contact us and for us to be able to give advice, whether it's something care trade can then look at supporting, or we can signpost through other people that we work with and other partners. There are some great organisations at the moment that are supporting with job searching and supporting people to find jobs. And I can, you know, we can signpost those as well.
And which organisation is your son with? Doing an internship?
It's actually the organisation, he found that the organisation was ambitious about it.
Yeah.
Well, you might be able to help.
Yeah.
Excellent. We've got a question there. They will.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Sorry. Question.
Is that the Autism Project?
Yeah.
So all our services are available across London, and our training is across the UK. Essentially as well. So we can talk about it. We can also do travel training as well. So we can support somebody. So our services are based, so although they're based across as well, there is an element of being in workshops, but we can support through travel training as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so what happens outside of London for people outside of London?
You're right.
So,
And we would,
to you know,
so there are some really amazing services outside of London, mostly obviously in the big cities. And we do recommend people. So if we get a phone call from somewhere in Leeds, we've got providers that we work with in Leeds. But we're a small charity. We are London based because there are only a few of us. We would love to have the Autism Project and have kind of care trade satellites all over the place. We would love to have that funding to do that. So the will is there, but funding isn't, unfortunately. But we can signpost and we can offer advice.
And can I just add to that? What people really need is a joined up map of the country which says where do you envision postcode, this is where you need to go. And this is how research is practically helpful, creating that sort of information, which will then be posted on places like the NAS website and our website and so on, because it's actually quite hard to find information. Sometimes people find they've stumbled across something. Well, access to work is a good example of that, isn't it?
Yeah. And also, there's employment autism.
Exactly.
It has got an amazing wealth of knowledge on their website. It's really worth having a look at the website because all those things that you just asked about, a lot of that information is there, and we can also take advice. We can also offer advice as well.
And employment autism isn't a London thing.
And what's the main funding for that talk about and how does the work be do you ever have barriers
Yeah, absolutely. The university infrastructure plugs us into all the various research councils so that we know what sort of funding is coming out. We're plugged into understanding things like priorities in the national strategy and all that sort of thing. So we get lots of information. Putting together research bids is really, really time consuming. your chances of success are sort of fairly limited. Organisations such as Care Trade and Employment Autism, quite often they need to partner with a university because a lot of stuff is behind a wall, the charities and so on, because you have to be located in a university to apply for it. Not everything. We've actually got more success with getting funding from small charities. So, or Research Autism, which is a precursor to Employment Autism, has funded us. Bailey Thomas Foundation, John and Lorna Wing Foundation, NHS England, Higher Education Academy, Society for Research in Higher Education. We've tended to get research from those small pots because the bigger, we haven't been particularly successful with the bigger funds. Well, because we just, I mean, we do, this is our bread and butter. We know all about this. And you look at something and think, oh, the chances of that are 4%. Chances of that are 38%. We better put our energies into that thing. But it's always patchy. It's always short term. And, you know, I always work, because on my professorial salary, the way the money is calculated within the university, I always put none of my time into any of our research projects because then I haven't got enough money to employ an autistic researcher. So I sort of fiddle about with the books a little bit. I'm sorry if that's being recorded, but that is true. Because it's amazing how little £10,000 buys, for example, it really is. Because obviously universities have their own costs and everything, you know, that having this doesn't cost nothing. So yeah, it's a really complicated and patchy and problematic picture, I'm afraid.
Okay,
Okay, interesting presentation. I think two things come out from it. How do we actually increase the sort of case for adult funded projects into employment? As speaking as someone who knows the field, no offense to children and young people, that's a perennial bugbear in the actual sector. And two, one of the things that come up in Judith's speech was the idea of unsung heroes. How do we actually make the case for unsung heroes, both in autistic people doing those mid-backline positions and also for job coaches too, not just in terms of money, but in terms of status?
Totally agree with you, Leo. I'm going to stand up because I can't see you.
I'm going to move our chairs.
I think, yeah, there are so many unsung heroes out there. There are so many people who it's their job. This is my job. This is what I do. You know, I actually don't need recognition for it because it's a job I've chosen. It's my career I've chosen, and I love it. But there are lots of people out there who don't know the role of job coach, who don't know what job coaches do. It could be a brilliant job that someone wants to go into. And actually, we need more autistic job coaches. We need more people supporting our people in the workplace who are autistic, who have the lived experience, who have the autistic voice. And that is something that I would love to have more of. I would love to support that, train. And that's just not happening. And we need to kind of work out why that's not happening. So I think it's really important that we look at that. But there are some fantastic people out there who support from the employer's perspective. And they do get recognition. Sometimes it's kind of very local. We're very appreciative of the work that our employers do. We value hugely what they do because without them, our young people would not be going into work, any of our people. But yeah, I mean, there's things like BASE. So BASE is a really great way of being able to recognise people within the industry. But it's kind of, you know, it's not everyone's. Not everyone's kind of part of it, or even knows BASE is the British Association for Supported Employment.
There's one more question.
In my experience, the biggest problem facing autistic people in getting employment is employers.
Right.
Because the barriers that my son has had to face in trying to get a job have just simply been too great for him to overcome. you mentioned in your slide, Nicola, about
7, but I thought you'd been out keeper.
if you haven't got the verbal skills, you might as well not turn up. And similarly, although my son was one of the first, or was in the first cohort of Project Search students at Whips Cross Hospital, they managed to get a job for 4 years through that, but lost the job. And we have had obviously the pandemic in between, but trying to get back into employment has been incredibly difficult. He had the possibility of some work experience in the medical records department at Queen's Romford. They offered it to him. 2 days later, they pulled it back. He went for a job at Guys and St Thomas's in medical records, did a tour of the place, applied for the job, not so much as an interview. It's extremely difficult if people aren't prepared to give autistic people an opportunity. The civil service, for example, would be a great place at lower grade jobs for people to have that opportunity, but they're not positively discriminated for. How do you overcome that problem?
Right, okay. So I completely agree with everything you said, and your son's experience, unfortunately, is one that I've heard so many times. I think what's really important, and I said before, we have trained well over 1,000 employers since last September. And I just hope that they will take something away. If they suddenly, something triggers a memory when they are interviewing, then that's great. But we do a lot of work around alternative recruitment practices, around inclusive practice, around looking at universal design when we train employers. And it's a real shame that this happened at Guys and St Thomas's, because they have a fantastic track record of the people both that we place there and also from staff that we then support through Access to Work, who've been really well supported. But it's really important that, I guess, staff are aware of the practices, staff are aware of what they need to put in as an adjustment. And it doesn't always filter through, so we need to do more work on that, and that's really kind of great to know. The other thing I think with Care Trade, just kind of, singing our praise again, is we don't stop supporting somebody. So we are in a really great position in the fact that we have someone come to us at 18 through the Autism Project, support them into the workplace. They can then move on to our employability team, or we can carry on supporting them through Access to Work. We can work with the employer, and there isn't kind of a cut-off. We're supported through Access to Work. As long as the funding's there, we can support somebody. That is something that we're very proud of, that we do, and that we do really well. It doesn't happen with all organisations. Some organisations are very siloed in support, which is a real shame. And there should be more kind of support that goes all the way through. And that's kind of what we do. We've done that because we've learned through experience. So we started off with the support beyond that. We've added on to our services based on the needs of our people. Happy to chat.
Can I just add one thing to that people who do not use speech or very much speech or any speech discriminating against because of unconscious bias, because there's this assumption if you don't speak you've got nothing to say, and this is nonsense, and we absolutely work on ensuring that employers understand that what comes out of your mouth doesn't represent what's going on in your head necessarily, and it's a massive barrier, huge barrier.
Okay, I think that's closed, unfortunately, but thank you so much. Sorry. If there's any more questions, might be able to catch at lunchtime.
I'm around all day, so please come and chat to me. But there was also the flip chart, so people can write things down. But yeah, come find me at lunchtime or Nikki if you want to talk.
Show our appreciation for Nikki. Thank you very much. We are going to move on. It's up to some very important questions. We're going to move on to our next session.
it takes a bit more energy.
It includes me, that's fine. And also Mahlia, that's fine.
At the same time, I need to be checking on my emails, so I'm not missing anything, whereas I'm running around. Does that make sense?
Sorry, I meant to be introducing to Mahlia. Just be doing that now. The next session.
Yeah.
Okay, we're very privileged to have two excellent speakers in the next session. We've got Mahlia, who's going to talk about really the artistic stuff, neurodivergence and being an artist and an advocate. It's very easy, isn't it, to assume autistic people go into IT. Autistic people can go into any field. And Mahlia will be talking about her experience effectively as an artist, which I think will be really helpful. And Phil, you've already heard from Phil because he's shared the previous session. And I'll just give you a little bit of background. Phil leads the design of the fast stream assessment process, along with a diversity and inclusion strategy and leadership curriculums, the civil service fast stream and emerging talent. So Phil's experience is quite different, and these two presenters are going to be talking about routes to developing an autistic person's career. And it's not just about getting a job, it's about getting on in employment as well, because people don't want to necessarily do the same thing for their entire life. It's about progression as well as securing the employment in the first place. So I'll hand over to our speakers. Thank you.
Me again, sorry. Just have you find out that slide. Okay, well, great pleasure to carry on with this wonderful day, and I hope you've enjoyed it so far. Please do grab a drink. I hope it's not too hot, but I think it's well worth the event, and hopefully you'll find it interesting as we go through it. Right, so I've got Mahlia after me speaking, but I'm very pleased now to say a little bit about what we've been doing civil service wise, which was mentioned a few minutes ago actually, in terms of what we're providing. And I'll go through sort of the work experience that we've been offering for about 7-8 years now, with Ambitious About Autism, which was mentioned also. And it's a really important program for the civil service. Obviously turbulent times generally, but actually this is one thing that we have been able to maintain and keep going, and hopefully is well thought of in various circles. The civil service actually provides service across the country, of course, and that's actually quite significant, because you'll have heard the term levelling up, and the idea that we're trying to support different areas of the country, not just London, not just the southeast. So that's changing, and that's really an important agenda about places for growth. And this very much includes the work we're doing in terms of autism and supporting people, young people with autism. And I'll say a little bit about what we've been doing. A lot of my work has been in this area, which is to do with Fast Stream, which is a graduate program, actually on pause. Yes, another thing that's slightly up in the air, but it's something that is well regarded, and it is a route for people with autism. We've certainly got quite a number of people with autism who have gone into Fast Stream and have been very successful. So the talents, the skills that they can offer, very much rewarded and acknowledged within the civil service. And this is a program that is #1 in the Times Top 100 currently for the last few years. So it is a program that's well regarded and shows that people with autism can have a real impact and come in. So that is a route for people, you know, in terms of that discussion that we were having earlier. It is a route that exists and maybe one that you consider. Elsewhere in the civil service, you can think about other roles. So it doesn't have to be graduate roles. There's apprenticeships, which we offer, and a vast number, growing number of apprenticeships. So people with autism can certainly apply for those at different levels, sort of equivalent to GCSE and upwards. And then there are other programs like T-levels, which may be considered perhaps, and also internships. So internships is what I'm going to say a little bit about in terms of what we've been offering, as I say, for a number of years, and hopefully will give you some insights. But certainly it is a route that I think has a great deal to offer for the autism space. Okay. It fits in, the internships fits into a sort of wider picture. We do quite a lot with schools, T-levels, you'll be aware of, that sort of industrial placements, and apprenticeships, as I mentioned, the internships, graduate programs. We have near-miss opportunities, near-miss being those who don't quite hit the pass mark for the graduate program. You can also enter into the civil service in a slightly different way, direct entry, but actually still give you incredible opportunities, chances to progress, despite not quite getting into the graduate program first time round. And then we have internal programs like Beyond Boundaries, for example, which is basically helping people who are inside the organisation in terms of the civil service and then advancing. So there's all sorts of different areas that can be moved into, and I've been working on those for about 13 years now on across those different areas, and we've been expanding in most areas, and it's a growing sort of pipeline which do offer lots of great opportunities. In terms of what we're trying to achieve, the whole D&I agenda is developing all the time in the civil service, and I suppose in the wider industry. But what we want to do is allow people from all backgrounds to rise to the top. And as I say, we've got people who have done our fast stream, who are autistic and have progressed. So they progressed into, for sure, senior civil service. So I don't know how aware you are, you may not want to know much about the hierarchy of civil service, but anyway, there is a lot of hierarchy, but senior civil service means something. It means that you've actually gone through the original sort of echelons of the organisation, and now a senior role at deputy director and above. And I know people with autism who have got to that level and also done the fast stream graduate program have achieved that as well. So it is absolutely possible, again, to show the pipeline that may exist for people with autism. In addition, we have an agenda which is about making the organisation visibly diverse in different ways, and making sure people know that we have autism programs, making sure it's inclusive for all, meaning that the issue of culture and agenda is shared for all people in terms of their workplace experience, and also that we are performance focused. And that's another, if you ever look at our civil service D&I strategy, it's not just about having a diverse representation, it is actually also about performance. So actually it's about delivering objectives, which obviously everybody wants to do, whether it's in the economy or levelling up or cost of living or any of those particular key points of focus. And then the final point being that we want to have a pipeline which is delivering a program which is highly diverse and inclusive. There we go. That's our agenda. That's our motivation. I think we're moving towards that. We have a strategy which is all about attracting people, whether it's autistic people or otherwise, developing their representation in the organisation, and then making sure when they come in that the culture and environment is supportive and giving them an experience which is very positive. I think one of the nice things about our autism program, the internship, is actually showing that there is a very good experience for people with autism, and that's incredibly important, that they are getting that good experience. I won't go through all these, sorry, but I just wanted to give you a sense of diversity in the organisation. So we're doing lots of different things. Obviously, the internships is one of them in the corner, but lots of other activities. So targeting particular institutions that we engage with. Nikki was talking about this organisation and Cambridge, Sheffield Hallam, for example, making sure our assessment design is appropriate. So with the autism program, we actually have a fairly light touch selection process. We talked about how we can bring people in to a program or to any organisation, into any role rather, if they have autism. So one of the things we offer, for example, is a program which doesn't require an interview. It actually just requires an application form. So it doesn't require that sort of verbal interaction to be selected. And we would sort of base our decisions on that sort of application process. And lots of training that we offer for our assessors relating to diversity. We do lots of research and lots of different activities such as cultural bias reviews to avoid the impact of any biases, unconscious or otherwise, in terms of our selection process. So there's some sense of our activities, and then lots in terms of inclusion, making sure our policies are absolutely inclusive and supporting things like mental health, being an ally to people from diverse backgrounds, using networks, and we will have an example from Katie. Is Katie in the audience? Not yet. But anyway, Katie is our chair of networks in the civil service, who will give you an example of that. Okay. So a lot of activities, a lot of things that are involved with. We have different internships. I'll mention this is specifically about people with autism, but it does have a disability strand. So if you're a parent or if you are a first year undergrad, you can apply for this. It's an early diversity internship program. It's a week in springtime called EDIP, and it includes people with disability, includes people with autism. So that can be applied for a little later this year, about September, October. And then similarly, our summer program, which we're running right at the moment, we've got 600 plus interns at the moment running through the civil service across the country in lots of different departments, who are undertaking lots of great work experience, and hopefully then will come into the organisation, into the civil service in terms of paid employment. Obviously, the internship itself is paid, but I mean in terms of opportunity. So those routes are really important. People with disability can actually access those disability opportunities. And then just to sort of summarise the other internships we were working with Bright Network, which is an external organisation which had access to about 1,500 interns in the space of 3 days, which had a major impact. And then our autism exchange internship program, which we're running right at the moment. We're in our final week this year's program for 85 interns, which is pretty much the highest we've had so far across the last few years. So I'll say a little bit about that. That brings us to the autism program. This is the sort of branding and working with Ambitious About Autism that we've been doing since 2015. And this is one of our fantastic interns, this is Luke, who is a wonderful ambassador for the program. And just in terms of the essence of it, it's for young people 18 to 25. It is 3 weeks at the moment, but we're hoping to extend to 4 weeks. But crucially, you can also have an extension. So we have the facility for people who do the internship to actually work in the organisation for up to 2 years. So you can get an extension in terms of fixed term point FTA. That's a crucial element of it, obviously. But in its initial format, it is 3 weeks at the moment. extend beyond that. Okay, so that's the essence of the internship, working with Ambitious, who are, as it says, National Charity for Autistic Children, Young Families, wonderful organisation that we know very well. And the components of the internship are that we have training for the managers, very important awareness training. We have what to expect elements where we're telling the interns, the young interns, about what they're going to experience before they start the internship. The actual work experience, working on projects, working on research, elements which is aligned to their skill sets, their qualifications, and so on. We have people up to degree level, people at Oxbridge, we have people at GCSE level, and so on. Lots of mentoring and skill sessions around selection, around dealing with networking and supporting their development of building relationships, and lots of other things besides. We have receptions, lots of great speakers. We have permanent secretaries who are head of the department speaking. We had Sir Patrick Vallance, who is head of science and engineering in the civil service. You may know from the pandemic, if you remember the pandemic, a few weeks ago. And also lots on careers and lots of other speakers. So that's the sort of broad experience that we've got. And we've sort of managed to increase the numbers in our internships, the autism internship, fairly well. We're up 85, pretty much the same as the previous year. Dipped because of the damn COVID experience, unfortunately, but broadly it was going up across the year, which is great. I think pretty much the largest of the programs with Ambitious, but maybe not. And lots of different departments. 23 departments are involved this year. Some fantastic opportunities across the board, from DWP to DCMS to CTS, BAYS, and lots of others who are all offering some fantastic routes into the organisation. Some great people, some wonderful interns that we've had over the years. Obviously, we've got permission to show these pictures. Some really, really fantastic people who I know are active either in roles or doing different activities. And more pictures here. Great guy. And then some more thumbs up in terms of their experiences. So that's across different years. Obviously, some of this is online. A lot of it is online. Due to certain circumstances. I suppose one of the things in terms of the pandemic, it's something that we looked at in terms of making it work, but the pandemic wasn't about it. It was actually something that we could actually embrace, and to be fair, I think actually worked very well for most of our interns. A lot of interns feel somewhat comfortable in that long pandemic environment, in terms of the online environment, and actually, we allowed them to flourish, or it allowed them to flourish. We also found that the online experience was very good selection. So people who had autism or were disabled actually tended to do better in the online environment, on selection process, on interviews, and tests, and so on, than the face-to-face experience. And it's about really explaining in that online environment about the unwritten rules, social rules that they may not be aware of, how you do online meetings, making sure that the interns are invited to lots of meetings, making sure that they know how to communicate if the online disconnects, and also making sure that there's clarity about working hours, flexibility of working hours, and making sure well-being is managed and monitored very carefully. All the way. Okay, a bit of feedback. We've had managers who have been very positive. 95% felt better equipped to support autistic people. They would recommend, 100% would recommend the program to a colleague. And the interns, well, 100% said they would recommend the program to others. 93% reported improve confidence. So this is the interns, that's the managers, and the additional feedback, we've got an amazing program which connects people and supports diversity of our organisation, fantastic experience, and the interns, the culture of the civil service is to echo the sentiments of fellow intern. A workforce that celebrates difference. So we are very positive about some of that feedback. And here's a few other examples of the wording that we got from the interns in terms of that feedback. So some really positive adjectives there, which I'm delighted with. And we've also achieved various awards last year, Recruitment Industry Disability Initiative, through the programme, and won that twice and various others across the years. Finally, just one more slide. I think, you know, in terms of learning, it is not necessarily about the result, but it's also how far people travel, their distance they improve. We're so impressed with the talents of our autism interns, and it's just incredible in terms of the impact they make. We need to trust the participants all the time. I think that's a key learning, and that trust is always rewarded. There is anxiety initially from the managers and from the interns. That's to be expected, but it always is resolved in most cases after a little while. You know, we don't want to have any preconception. I almost hesitate to say it. I know it's said so often today, but anyway, there is so much individuality in terms of autism. We do need quiet spaces, like we're here today, flexible work is important. So various bits of learning. But overall, it has been a pleasure and a great experience for us, and hopefully will advance and has advanced the potential and the opportunities for young people with autism. There we go. I'll stop there. Over to Mahlia. Thank you.
Everyone, I'm Mahlia, I'm autistic, and I have a portfolio career. The portfolio career is, so instead of having one full-time or part-time job, it's a series of part-time jobs that make up your career. I will talk through what I currently do, my journey from getting to where I am to having this portfolio career, the pros and cons of having a portfolio career, and take questions at the end. So I work as a visual artist and neurodiversity advocate. That involves quite a lot of things actually. So I write blogs for Employment Autism. Last month I was at Glastonbury Festival speaking on a neurodiversity panel with Chris Packham and some other people, which was fun. I create artistic exhibitions, immersive installations. A lot of my work is basically around improving understanding and acceptance around neurodiversity. But alongside that, I also mentor and coach autistic people. That's pre-employment and also in the workplace. I do that remotely. I have a role at a university where I'm supporting students to find placements. And I also work largely remotely as a communications officer for a local not-for-profit. So as you can see, I do quite a few different things. So how it all started. So I went to university, I did psychology and business. That was all really good. I really enjoyed studying. I did struggle being at university, but not the studying side of things. So I had quite a conventional start. I was on a graduate scheme straight out of university. So that was where it all began. So I don't struggle with the recruitment process as such. I've had a lot of interviews. I've often just found that the jobs themselves don't work out, and that's because I just haven't been supported later on in the role, and there have been difficulties further down the line. So it's given me a lot of interview practice, I suppose, and I find it quite formulaic. I don't agree with a lot of recruitment processes, but I understand what they're looking for, and I know what to do to get that job. So that's one aspect that I don't struggle with. I think having worked in a lot of professional environments, a lot of international people, like in London, I haven't struggled to connect with those people. So I always seem to get on okay, and that's fine. I'm really organised as well, so I'm very good at structuring my time and my workload. So that's, again, something that I really don't struggle with at all. Time management is definitely my friend. Sensory environment, though, is something that I struggle with quite profoundly. So having worked in a range of offices, open plan spaces don't work well. Not all of them, like some of them are okay. For example, if I have like a wall behind me and if there aren't too many downstairs, so they're not all terrible. So whenever I go for a job interview, I actually ask to see where I would be sitting, just to get a sense if I know that reasonable adjustments can be made, or if it's just the type of culture that I just won't fit into. So that's quite important. I've also found that there's no quiet or private spaces in a lot of organisations that I've worked at. One in particular springs to mind, even their meeting rooms were literally like ceiling to floor glass. Like there was no privacy whatsoever, like nowhere that you could go to. Even going to the toilet felt like a networking exercise. It was awful. The only respite I had in that job was going to sit in my car at lunchtime in a basement, just in the dark. Like that was the only place I could go to. Yeah, offices can be like noisy, smelly, a lot of air conditioning, bright artificial lighting. Yeah. I think I just struggle with the fact that you cannot control your environment at all when you're at work. And the bigger the space, the trickier that is. Again, like I've worked in a lot of organisations that are very kind of progressive and innovative and all the rest of it. At the end of the day, they have wanted you to be there at a certain time and to leave at a certain time. So this is pre-pandemic, but there was really no working from home unless it's a very exceptional circumstance. And even with friends that have now gone back to the office, like that just hasn't really changed that much in a lot of instances. Another thing that I used to really struggle with was the fact that I'd go for this interview and I'd love the job description and that would look amazing. But then when I'd join the organisation, there would be the sense of you need to be part of all these different work streams, and you'd have to be a part of them, you'd be volunteered for them, a lot of other extracurricular things, social stuff. I really struggled to find time to actually do my job when there were so many other things that I had to be a part of. And I also didn't understand that either. So I was like, well, that was the job description. Why did you not put all of that into the job description and like manage expectations better? So I often found that I was just working into evenings, working Sundays, doing the part that I really liked. Networking has changed a lot, but I think when I was part of the office working world, it was very much like you need to get under the skin of your stakeholders, you need to kind of be there, be very visible. It's quite an aggressive sense of networking. It wasn't a way that suited me, and I'm sure a lot of people. But that was something I found really difficult. I have learned my own way of networking since, and there are different ways to network, so that's quite nice. Career progression as well. So I never had any desire to want to progress because what I saw above me was not appealing to me at all. It didn't suit me. I don't want to manage a lot of people. I don't want to manage more than one person really. And there were no role models for alternatives, like other ways to be in the workplace. And that's really hard because if you only see one trajectory and that doesn't suit you, then you're not going to be motivated. There's no desire there. So that was something that, yeah, really held me back. And also all of these things were very confusing to me as well. I felt very sort of different and alone, and that builds up. So that's, yeah, something I've struggled with a lot. And then, yeah, being in those work environments, having to mask a lot to fit in, I would burn out quite frequently. So I didn't last very long in these jobs. Some of these were like days, like months. I've only had 2 main jobs in my life, I would say. The first main job, I ended up having panic attacks in the office and left, ended up having a bit of time off. The second main job I was off for mental illness for 18 months, and then that did not work out at all. And I had support to a certain extent, but then I think when they realised that their support, which they hadn't created in collaboration with me. It was dictated to me, and they felt they were being supportive. And then when they saw that their plan for me wasn't working out, it was pretty much a let's get Mahlia out, and that was awful. But I've heard lots of stories like this. I'm definitely not alone. So I was diagnosed with autism 7 years ago. It helped a lot. So I learned a lot about communication and why I really struggle with relationships with people. So it's given me a lot of self-awareness and strategies around that. Why I'm so sensitive and drained after being in like these type of environments, and why I need time afterwards to recoup and rejuvenate, and to not feel bad about it either, to have that compassion for myself. I think that's really helped. Bilateral movements being difficult, so things like not being able to attend like aerobic classes after work with some friends, or I would literally bump into people and yeah, I stopped going. Sounds like a minor thing, but actually when you're trying to just fit in with like your peers, like these things are really hard. I failed my driving test. I passed on my 9th occasion, but I passed first time learning to drive an automatic car. But things like that, these sort of markers that your peers are kind of going through very quickly, and then you're struggling so much, it really does affect you. So my last main job ended. I was diagnosed with autism. That was a really challenging time. It took about a year for the news to kind of sink in. I had previously been diagnosed with personality disorder, so it's something I was quite sensitive about. I then took up a portfolio career because I wanted to get back into work slowly. I think there are a lot of strengths that I have that suit working in a portfolio lifestyle. So I had to focus. I can't stay in an office from 9 till 6 or however long and dip in and out like a lot of my peers could. I prefer to work for a shorter period of time or shorter chunks of time. I'm really organised. I can manage different jobs and workloads. But the main thing that I'd say for me is the fact that I have the flexibility to manage my time. So if I have a meltdown or any kind of mental health issues where I need to rest and have like a couple of days off, having a portfolio career gives me that flexibility. So it's brilliant in that respect. So yeah, there are definitely pluses to it, but then drawbacks can be that you do have a lot to juggle, and it's really hard when all of your jobs have busy periods, and you need to be able to do all of them. So that can be difficult. You can anticipate some, but not all. I guess being self-employed, like you're not being paid if you're on holiday, if you're sick. You have to manage your finances a lot better and plan around that. But I think that if they are good learnings, also trying to get a mortgage is really, really hard being self-employed and having a portfolio career. So for me, it's very much a work in progress. It's definitely better than having like the one full-time job that I had before, for sure. I would like to be able to simplify things a bit. So perhaps instead of having 4 roles, have 2, that would be great. I think it's meant that I've had to reflect quite a bit on what is and what isn't working, because a lot of what you're doing is for yourself, like being self-employed. So there's that flexibility to change and think about things a bit more, and I think that's really important. And work fits around my needs, my mental health, and what I want. So that's a definite plus. So yeah, thank you for listening. Any questions for either of us?
Thank you very much.
I'll facilitate the questions, and just want to first of all say let's show our appreciation for 2 great presentations. Really interesting. Thank you so much. Do you want to move the chairs? Are you comfortable standing?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Lady in the white shirt.
Thank you very much. First gentleman, that was really nice. My question is actually to feel a person. One who a first we're waiting for our summer intern through Autism Change. We had one last year that was really previous. But I was just wondering if you had some insight to share. One of the things that we've struggled with at DEFRA is the video's onboarding process, which has delayed interns last year and also this year. And it's a common challenge with our apprenticeships as well, and the other internships. And so these young people not having bulk of the paperwork required or the work competencies, IDs. It can be really expensive if you go and actually purchase a passport to pass your onboarding process. So wondering if there's insight of other improvements more. Because then if you compare to the early diversity internships, which are the week, it has a much more streamlined onboarding process. Yet both feel these big requirements.
Yeah, very, very good point, very important point. Yeah, it's been pretty frustrating, obviously for yourselves and for us. The reason for it was actually resourcing. We actually found that the section that was undertaking that were under-resourced significantly, which seemed to come about because, as you know, there's a recruitment freeze, so we didn't have that resource. That's an excuse, but it's the only option going forward is to start early. And I know we say that all the time. Have to start even earlier to try to achieve the timing that needs to allow people to get into the organisation at the right time onto the internship. So it's very frustrating, very awkward, unfortunately, but we are endeavouring to find a way forward next time. And at least provide an experience, even if they are late, they will still be getting the experience, and they still are able to attend central events even before they start the actual internship. So that's unfortunately one of the current sort of points that we have to deal with. So I'm very pleased that we have interns. That's good to hear. That's really pleasing to have good support. That's what we all say. That's what it is very, very frustrating situation. Obviously, we want to try and bring people through as quickly as we can on time. I think it's fair to say that this year has been the most strict of all the years that we've been involved with the process.
Thank you. We have a big and also it was a good experience and we realised actually that wasn't their role, but there's a different role and we managed to support them together to pick that role in another department. We're looking forward to having them again. I have loads of questions that put back into that.
All right. Okay. Cheers.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yes, lady at the back in the black t-shirt.
No, not always actually. Only where I felt comfortable. There was a job that I started in the middle of the pandemic. I didn't tell them. Only when I came back and I wanted to change my hours, and I used that as a reason to go ahead with that. Normally only when I want reasonable adjustments and when I feel like I really know and trust my colleagues and want to disclose. It's very individual actually, I'd say, in terms of what workspace I'm in and who I'm working with. Not an easy answer, sorry. I've disclosed it a few times. I'd say it's been scary every single time, but I think it always pays off though, because I've been fortunate in that there's always been that manager who's willing to have that conversation with me about it. I haven't always done what I've wanted, but a good example is where I wanted to have the lights changed in our office. I shared with my manager. I wanted to have a dimmer switch, but then speaking with the states, that wasn't possible. So then we had like 2 light switches, so we could just have half of them on, and that kind of went on a little while. But that was a really positive outcome.
Leah?
2 questions actually. One to Philip and then to both of you. Okay, Philip, my question is, do you share best practice more widely within employment, within public sector organisations, or commercially about it, advancing autistic people? And then to the panel generally, what key things do you think supported employment organisations that are around it and charities like my own one, the National Autistic Society, could do to support autistic people advancing in different professions and employers?
That's a good set of questions. Yeah, I mean, what was the first one? Actually, forget exactly what was the first question?
What do you do to share best?
Oh yeah, sorry, best practice. So it's really inherent in what we do. I mean, we do promote the work we do quite a lot through conferences, through events, through blogs and publications. So we try to encourage other organisations. It's fair to say that lots of organisations have taken on board internships over the last few years. So I think that's happening. And there's also some wonderful ambassadors anyway, organisationally who are doing lots in that space. So yeah, I think that is inherent in what we're doing, and hopefully is happening as much as we can make it happen. So, second question. No.
That was on what charities can do to support advanced autistic people.
To support advancement in autistic people. I guess just having role models and having those conversations with people, understanding that everybody is different. I'm sure, I think someone mentioned in the previous one, like you meet one autistic person, you just met the one, and finding out what it is that they actually want to get out of their career, and then supporting them throughout, and realizing that it's not just the recruitment and onboarding process, it is the entire employment journey that needs to be considered and support available. And I think, yeah, supporting autistic people to more senior positions so that they do then become these role models and show that there are alternative routes to progress and what those look like, and showing that those are equally valid routes. Yeah, seeing more of that, more diversity, that would be hugely encouraging. I think that speaks volumes, and having more of that in the world just generally. I would like to see more of that. And just more conversations happening as well. Like I mentioned earlier with the reasonable adjustment requests, I haven't always had those, but I've always had those open and honest conversations. So that, and I guess people willing to learn and be a bit vulnerable, being okay with asking questions and being okay with being like corrected, something corrected. And I think we're often a bit just a culture, I'd say, about just asking people questions and being curious. I think more of that needs to happen. Like the same way you would ask someone about their like religion or festival or like sexual orientation or any type of conversation that you have with someone and you want to learn. I think just being a bit more open to that generally, I think we'd kind of move beyond then this need to categorize and to see people as individuals. That's my greatest hope.
I think the big one for me would be opportunities, finding opportunities. There is so much demand, you know that. We get lots of applications, not satisfied with applications. So, like NAS, they provide as many opportunities as possible, as much support as possible, across the board at different age levels. That would be enormously beneficial. I know there's people in this audience who would benefit in terms of giving those opportunities. So, that would be the big thing, just expanding chances for people young.
Thank you. Oh, and lady here in the, I can't do colours, purplish top, and the gentleman here in the turquoise top.
Big question really is for the NAS was thinking about lobbying for legislation to protect the neurodiverse employees because the line lies with the employer. Reasonable adjustment what the employer considers reason is very limited, and it's too vague. It's fine that it's open for interpretation to allow the broad range of possible adaptations for things, but unfortunately, it does not specify a boundary, level of modifications. And I mean, you set standard for modifications and reasonable adjustments that are reasonable to allow this person to would be autistic individual or a neurodiverse individual. I think that is something that we really need to be pushing for, legislation to protect diversity, to make some mandatory.
The whole thing of mandatory reasonable adjustments rather than it being almost doing it the employer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about bullying myself. I agree with what you're saying that there does need to be a minimum, because reasonable adjustment is open to interpretation. It's open for each organisation what they can offer as well. And in the past I've had to call on like trade union help or an advocate or someone to help support my needs and speak for me. And I shouldn't have had to have done that in the past. Like my more recent examples have been better, but where I've been in very bad states, I think that's been my only option. What I say is that I agree in that there should be. Do you have anything to add?
I think we've been lucky enough in the civil service. We've been lucky enough to actually achieve a fairly good level of support, neurodiversity, autism support, and for other disabilities. So for a fast street graduate level, we've actually achieved a level of success of about a quarter of all our appointees having a disability of some sort, which was, we were really good in terms of achievement. Then it's about, I mean, somewhat about monitoring the data. So we've actually broken down all our recruitment in terms of the applications, in terms of different categories, including neurodiversity, including autism, and making sure that you are achieving the representative level, which we have done, thankfully, on autism and neurodiversity. It doesn't have, it's not without challenges. You have high representation, then you are obviously going to need to support people in the workplace and give them every help along the way. So that does require a lot of resource. But at the moment, we've been able to achieve that through Roots Disability Conference. I suppose the big banner that we need to help with that. But yeah, I mean, as much support legislation as we can, it's important.
And definitely in the front row.
I've got a question. So, do you keep the statistics of the attorneys that go on a permanent job? And also, do you, is it the ones that don't go on? Do you like record? Do you know where decision, like who's like, yeah, if an attorney wants to stay on, but so didn't keep, or the civil service wanted the attorney decided to go do something else? Yeah, do you keep those statistics?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, when we checked it previously, the majority do have something, either a role or a study opportunity. We've struggled with that tracking, we must say, that actually tracking people, in part for various reasons. It's always difficult to track people, but autism has particular challenges as well. We haven't always been able to keep up to date with people in that group in terms of where they end up. But it is something we continue to try and monitor as much as possible. We know certainly people who are in the organisation, the civil service, who are.
Yeah, so, I mean, so what happens on the last day of the person in internship? Do they have a? I mean, do they get invited to apply, or what happens?
They
goodbye.
They actually, obviously, well, the whole process is about encouraging their applications, giving them insight into what opportunities there are, giving them skills to apply and do various assessment interviews. And then the last day, we encourage our partner, Ambitious Festival, to support that group And that's really the key thing that we're doing. Obviously, we try to keep in contact with ourselves as a civil service, but it's an ongoing relationship, and we do it. It is a challenge.
Yeah. No, this is going to have to be the last question because I've got to do lunch arrangements. So,
In the presentation, it looked as if most of the jobs that, or the opportunities that you were offering within the civil service were for fairly high achieving academic people. Is there anything that could be offered, a metaphorical post-room job within the civil service for those who aren't as academically qualified, but could fill lower level jobs and give them the opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I did mention graduate roles because that happens to be what I'm mostly involved with. But if your son, if I may say, could go to civil service jobs, which is a portal jobs in the civil service, and that is where you would access or identify those opportunities. And it's certainly not just at the graduate level, it is at AO level, which is administrative, EO, executive officer, at that level as well. And search on department, search on grade, and search on any sort of role that might be relevant. Just to give you a quick example, there was somebody indeed who was an intern who was appointed to a role that he wasn't quite fitted to, but then went into a postal room in the civil service and he flourished. He absolutely loved it. That's an example. So there are the civil service is fortunate; it has huge opportunities. Obviously, it's been held back because of the pandemic. In terms of getting into those roles, hopefully in the next year or two that will be.
My son had some work experience through MENCAP at the House of Lords Library, which he absolutely loved.
Yeah.
But those are hen's teeth jobs, and it's very, very difficult to try and access that sort of thing.
Keep searching on the civil service jobs. That would be one.
I can't take any more questions, but you can do it. Can I just say as well, this whole thing about social capital, cultural capital, people who've got somebody behind them helping them to navigate this a much better place, and we want to think about absolutely everybody from all backgrounds. And this is a challenge really, because like there are a lot of parents in the room, there's obviously a lot of hard work. So we haven't got any time for any more questions now, but I would say massive thank you to both our speakers because that was really illuminating. And then tell you that lunch is on the mezzanine, which is just outside. Immediately outside, you'll see a set of stairs. Obviously, there is a lift as well, which is signposted. We don't all have to stampede at once because there's plenty of food. And if you don't like queuing, I'll just sit here for a bit and go in 5 minutes. And there's a quiet room signposted next to this one, as well as you can eat on the mezzanine. Yeah. Certainly, yeah. And just a quick reminder as well, evaluation forms, at whatever point you leave, please fill in your evaluation form. Make it clear you're commenting on the bit of the session you've been in. So thank you very much. Hilary, did you want to say something? It looked like you did. Yeah.
Outside, there's a quiet room, there's also tables there. So great, lots of food, and the next session is 2 o'clock.
Yeah, 2 p.m. back here. Thanks. If you can be back here at 5:02, that would be great. And don't forget to gently hold it back.
Yeah, so great for this. Thank you.